All right, recording is started, and let me go ahead and, as usual, go ahead and drop into the Zoom chat a link to the agenda document, the one you see on my screen. Folks are welcome to jump on into there, and you can add yourself as an attendee, but you can also add agenda items for anything that folks want to discuss and bring up today. We don't have a super deep agenda today, so there's definitely time for any other topics that folks want to get into. So let's jump on into it. So first, let's start with all the milestone checkups and recent releases and all that jazz. Since the last community meeting, and by the way, yeah, we did cancel the last one, it's the last scheduled one because some of us were in London for KubeCon. So we didn't have that one. But since the last community meeting, we had a series of core Crossplane patch releases that were basically a whole bunch of CVE fixes in our Golang dependencies. Those continue. I'm not going to, there's enough of those going on, and we continue to try to stay on top of those and keep Crossplane's dependencies pretty healthy from a security perspective. So all the currently supported releases, 1.19, 1.18, and 1.17, we went ahead and released patch releases for all of those. I think I saw that from Renovate, there's another security related fix. So there's likely going to be another round of patch releases, but I'll follow up on that after the meeting here. Okay, so the next release, the next major release here for us is 1.20. So that is coming up soon. I made an announcement on the Crossplane Slack yesterday about the dates are more firm for this. We had originally been targeting early May in general, and now we have a specific date that we're targeting for May 14th. So the community calendar has been updated, and what that means basically is that we are targeting a feature freeze by the end of this week. So all feature scope level work should be in by the end of this week. And then next week on Thursday, we will have a code freeze for bug fixes and everything should be in. And then we will cut a release candidate for 1.20 at that point. And then 1 week after that, on May 14th, we expect to do the 1.20 release. As always, we are quality driven, not date driven. So these are the dates we anticipate, but to get in the things that we need to have a quality release, we will shift the dates around as expected, or as we need, so that we get a quality release out. Let's take a look at the 1.20 board, because there is a fair amount of stuff going on. Oh, that is small. Let me make this bigger. Yeah, so there's basically, we want to get things done that are on this board. There are 9 outstanding PRs and issues open right now for review. So we've got a little bit of a backlog to dig through. Some of these are, and they're kind of in priority order, I would say, too, from top to bottom. So some of these are, feature level stuff like Adam. Congratulations, Adam, on building out a feature very quickly. By the way, I'm very impressed with your speed to deliver, my friend. But Adam has a PR open that's fixing a long-standing problem in Crossplane, where basically, if you're mirroring your packages to a private registry or a different registry, the dependency management for that, it does not work well. And so Adam is a feature to be able to help support that mirroring there. And so that is a feature that we do want to get in by feature freeze. So we should be reviewing this today. We should be following up to drive that PR to closure. And then some of the other things, the further down you go, are some more bug fixes and smaller scope things that'll be fine to get in before code freeze, I would say. So there are a number of great community contributions in this release as well too. So some of these ones here that, in fact, we wanted to get some attention on them for 1.19, but we didn't have the time as a maintainer team. So we do want to get attention to them for 1.20 and get some of these in as well. So the Crossplane maintainer team will be busy over the next, the rest of this week and into next week too, reviewing PRs, stewarding contributions, and trying to get things in before we declare a feature freeze and code freeze. Is there anything that's not on this board for 1.20 that folks wanted to bring up while we're at it? All right, cool. Go ahead and move on then. Oh, yeah.
Sorry, I couldn't find the mute button. I might try to see if I can get in a quick enhancement to Crossplane render to basically to try to run the composition functions that it invokes with some sort of an environment variable to indicate, hey, you should give me more debugging data than you normally would. We've just been doing a lot of crossplane render testing with function Go templating, and it's really tedious to try to find YAML syntax errors and other errors that don't show up until the rendering happens. And we just really need a way of telling the functions that, spit out the whole context of the error. Don't just tell me that there's an error. So
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah, I
I don't know
remember
if I,
talking about that on Slack recently, Bob, as well. So that, yeah, I totally get that where you're coming from that. And if yeah, just like if you can get something in, as soon as you open a PR, just let your fellow maintainer team know, and people will be happy to take a look at it, I'm sure.
yeah, I'm going to try to get that in today. So we'll see if that works.
And Bob, did you say that the function that you're having the most trouble with in terms of debug, observability, development, inner loop, et cetera, was it Go templating?
Yeah, I mean, it just, it tends to process the template and spit back an error message, but it doesn't give you the context of the error. So, it'll give you a line number, but that's not really all that helpful. A lot of times you just need to see the template before you can say, oh, yeah, that's where the problem is.
Cool. And one thing that will be interesting to analyze there, Bob, is like when you have kind of like a more clear, example of what the more verbose debug experience is going to look like, kind of comparing like, how in depth that is, how, I don't know, for lack of a better word, invasive that may be, and compare that to how, the normal level of information that's returned for, regular function handling there, and just, compare how different
Yeah.
those are. So that'll
Yeah,
be
I can
interesting to
definitely
see.
show you the before and after. I mean, I kind of compare it to Helm debug command, right? Where if you're running a Helm template and you give it minus minus debug and it finds an error, it will spit out the template that it tried to render, so you can see exactly what it's trying to do.
Oh, provide that further context.
Yeah,
Gotcha. Cool. You're gonna be working that today, Bob? Is that your near-term
yeah,
future, it sounds like?
I'm hope. Yeah, I mean, it's not a huge change, right? I'm just trying to get something put together today. So
Cool. I hope you find the time, my friend. All right. Cool. So yeah, let's just we looked at the release board and what's left basically, but kind of let's just do a quick review of the big things that have been going on in the 1.20 timeframe, and kind of the higher level features there. So V2, obviously that's not part of the 1.20 release, but that's something that we spent a major amount of time on, and we'll talk about that later in the agenda here. But that's kind of a big thing that's been folks have been spending time on in the 1.20 timeframe. I do want to call out that real-time compositions, like Nick got to spend some very good quality time on that. And, that feature has always had the promise of being super, super useful, but in its alpha state, it was fairly buggy and unreliable. And so Nick spent some time deep debugging and getting some root causes on some of these pesky timing related race condition sort of issues. And so real-time compositions has been matured to beta now. And I believe that means it's on by default now as well. So that'll be super, super useful for being able to, make changes in, your composed resources or composite resources, your compositions, whatever, and see results, actually happen very, very quickly instead of having to wait for like a polling interval or something. So I'm very excited about that getting to a mature state and to advanced to beta and being part of the release. Also, we did some work to get change logs rolled out to some of the providers in the ecosystem. And so that'll be included in this timeframe as well. Like provider Kubernetes has it, provider Helm will have it as well. So that's something that's included here as well. And then we already talked about Adam's effort for having better support for actually marrying your packages and their dependencies to private registries. So there's kind of the high level roadmappy features that are included in the 1.20 timeframe. Okay, let's keep moving on here. So I think a lot of folks working on the provider ecosystem in Upjet are on holiday today. So I'm just gonna go ahead and take this one real quick. I did want to let folks know that there is a new release of the Upjet framework for generating providers in the Crossplane ecosystem. But I want to specifically call out here to take note of the release notes, because this release of Upjet it advances the Crossplane runtime dependency for Upjet providers to the latest release of Crossplane runtime 1.19, 1.18.1. But there are some steps you want to take if you have an Upjet-based provider when you're updating your Upjet dependency here. There's some ordering of the steps that you want to do to deal with some breaking changes essentially from Crossplane runtime. So Sergen has taken the time to write them out specifically in the release notes here. So before you go ahead and don't bump everything all at once. Basically, do it in a phased process, and you'll get a smooth provider update there with generating resources again in healthy state. You can avoid any issues there by following the release notes. All right. I also wanted to call out here too, just a reminder to folks that for Upbound's official providers, the access policy that had been talked about for a long time is now in effect, and there's a FAQ here, like in the Upbound docs there to answer pretty much any questions you may have. So do check that out if you still have any lingering questions on that. Anything else from providers of the provider ecosystem for folks? There's another agenda item further down that we'll get into specifically, but anything else that anybody wants to bring up for providers? All right, let's keep moving then. All right, as always, we got a content section here for folks, talks, webinars, blog posts, etc. in the Crossplane ecosystem. So feel free to click through those. There's some interesting stuff, that you folks would take the time to watch and consume, and let us know if you have any questions about those later on. And one of these is the KubeCon talk that Nick and I gave in London at KubeCon, and so that was the main focus on that was V2. So it's been a couple months since we got to meet together, and so I really did want to talk through what we did for V2. And help everyone kind of understand it there. So we worked pretty hard on this, and got to for core Crossplane, almost a feature complete state for what we've been talking about for a vision for V2. So let's take a quick look at the release notes there. So basically, the three major things about what we think we would want to do in a Crossplane V2 is that both managed resources and composite resources now are namespaced. And then also Crossplane can compose any arbitrary Kubernetes resource. It doesn't have to be specifically a Crossplane MR. It's not necessarily cluster scoped. Crossplane's a lot less opinionated about that. And that helps kind of build a stronger story around not only composing infrastructure and building a platform for infrastructure, but also for your applications as well. This is released. This was available at the KubeCon London timeframe. So folks have been trying it out. I know Victor has been putting it through the paces, and I definitely appreciate all the effort you've put in there, Victor, for testing it out and giving some great feedback. But we'd love to feed folks to try it out. Let us know what you think. And we did an entire documentation kind of revisit and rewrite as well too. So there's a whole bunch of good information here about kind of introducing folks to Crossplane, helping them understand everything that's in V2. We have some different kind of getting started guides with a different approach than we did for V1 to help people kind of get your hands dirty with it. So walking through these quick starts here will really help you understand from a tangible perspective what the experience in Crossplane V2 looks like. So yeah, we're pretty happy with the way this turned out, and the response has been pretty positive as well. The talk at KubeCon was really, really popular, and it was just good vibes all around for that. So kudos to Nick again for driving this effort. Really grateful for the thinking and effort that Nick was putting into that. There's links here to the talk if you happen to miss it. The slide deck as well is available there. And then just one final reminder that the intent of this V2 preview was to get something tangible into folks' hands to try it out for what we believe the V2 vision would look like, right? The design proposal here is still open. That has not been ratified, approved, and merged. It's still open, and there's still plenty of comments on it. So, you know, we just wanted to get something into people's hands and have something practical and tangible to play with. But you know, the design has not been fully ratified. So there's still, you know, time to get your opinions in, you know, let your voice be heard. Let us give us feedback about if you think this is the right direction or not. And yeah, plenty of opportunity to still kind of steer that, steer the V2 ship there. Okay, so quick update on our graduation effort. So we got to meet in London. KubeCon London was very, very productive. We got to meet with our technical oversight committee sponsors at KubeCon London, sit down face to face with them and kind of talk through some of the feedback that they had that came up during due diligence. So I think something that's really positive here is the feedback they gave. You know, we basically integrated all of it. You know, we made a number of changes to the Crossplane docs and, you know, kind of drawing more clear lines between vendors and, you know, upstream project. And so those are all integrated, released, published, done. And, you know, the TOC was happy to see that. So we will be meeting again sometime soon and talking about next steps for this. They may want to see these changes that we've made kind of, you know, bake a little bit longer amongst the community and the ecosystem. Or we may be ready to go, you know, restart our due diligence period. So, you know, it's a positive, it was definitely a good conversation, good experience with them, you know, and we're, you know, looking forward to making progress again on our graduation effort. So cool, that was great. And then the next two things we have here are basically around, what's the best way to say this? Issues amongst the greater landscape that affected Crossplane. So we did write-ups. I think I messed up the links here because these look like the exact same links. So I'm gonna have to find which one's wrong and which one's right and then fix that as we go through it. But let's do these in order. So this feels like a lifetime ago now. Mark, I know you were pretty involved with it as well too. How long ago was this TJ Actions change files exploits?
No idea, like
Feels like a lifetime ago now.
month and a half
Yeah.
ago?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, yeah, it was a month and a half ago. But basically, let's start cleaning up some tabs. And let's see if this is the right one as well. Yes, this is the right one. Yeah, so this was kind of a big deal. But there was a somewhat popular GitHub action that basically does like a diff of your repo to see you know, if there's anything that's been changed throughout the build process and you know, you want to make sure that like your build process doesn't actually affect the source tree like that. So a lot of the upjet providers use this basically, you know, because they do a lot of code generation. You want to make sure that that's converging and that's not giving you different results, or, you know, you've got the latest generated resources in there. But basically, there was an exploit in that GitHub action, and it was actually a fairly gnarly exploit where some malicious code was injected in there. And then as in addition to that, all of the releases, the tags of all versions of the entire repo's history were rewritten to point to that exploit as well. So tons and tons of people got hit by this. It was kind of gnarly. Then we did a full audit of it as well. So we have 19 Crossplane repos that were using this action. Only 2 of them were actually ended up being exploited because their actions ran during the time that the exploit was out there and things were vulnerable. So the docs repo and provider PagerDuty were the 2 Crossplane repos that were exploited from this. But we are fortunate though that there was not any sensitive information that was leaked. Basically, the malicious code like looks at all of your secret GitHub action secrets and prints them out to the logs so anyone can see them is basically what it does. So there weren't anything in those jobs that was sensitive information. So we kind of dodged a bullet here, but there are definitely some learnings from this that is good to share with the community so that we could be better positioned to avoid this kind of thing in the future. So basically don't use, and Scott, with your background and your history, my friends, feel free to chime in and say anything here that would be even better than what I'm suggesting, dude. But basically, using GitHub Actions, don't point to versions, use a specific digest instead. So you know exactly, you know, the immutable, you know, like code that you're using for it. You know, it's very explicit about that. And then obviously limit your scope of their permissions and secrets and stuff. If you put things at the global level, then any job, any step in your job there will have access to it. And that just kind of, you know, limits or increases the surface area of a potential vulnerability. Same thing for permissions as well. Like, don't let your jobs have write access to everything. Just give them the permissions that they need to. So, you know, that's kind of some of the lessons from this. We did a fairly good job for most of those. That's kind of why we didn't really get to, nothing sensitive was really leaked here, but, you know, we're not perfect. And there's, you know, definitely things that we can kind of continue as a community and as an ecosystem improve on. Scott, do you have anything to add to that too, by the way, my friend?
No, that's a good list. There's a couple tools out of StackBlock that help make that process pretty simple. If you just run it on your GitHub Actions, and it turns all the actions tags into digests, and then it adds some comments so that Dependabot will update them for you, but you still have to audit those updates from Dependabot.
Ah, cool, nice. That's definitely useful. Is that the Minder tool, Scott, or is that a different tool from StackBlock?
It uses Minder, but there's like another CLI that you run in specifically for updating tags to hashes or SHAs to in actions themselves.
Got it.
I've run
Nice.
it. It's stupid fast, and it make me look like a hero.
Awesome. Yeah, well, if anybody wants to take the time to run that tool and also be a hero, they're certainly welcome. Encourage that. Okay, cool. And then the other one that affects lots of folks in the Crossplane ecosystem. This is not a security vulnerability. Thank God, there's only one of those in this list here. And this is definitely not the right discussion. So let me. Where the heck did I put that then? Let's click on this, and that's not the right one. So let's just look for this. Oh, is this one? Oh, they are different numbers. I am just blind. 6339 and 6399. Okay. Thank you for everybody watching how good my eyesight is. All right, real quick. So I think there are some provider and ecosystem extensions for Crossplane that are still affected by this. I think we just ran into another one today, which is function extra config maybe, or function environment config. I can't remember which one, but this is still happening out there until we take specific steps to fix it. So basically the GitHub Actions for caching, they GitHub sunset some of their legacy versions of that. And so they no longer, you know, some of the versions are no longer supported basically. So there's 2 explicit steps you can take to make sure that you are, you know, your function or your provider or whatever is working. So then they're listed right here. Basically, you need a newer version of BuildX if you're using it. And then also if you are using the download artifact action, you need to exclude Docker build things from it. You do those and your build should be working and fixed again. And yep, so this is at a common place for everybody to see. And also, even if you're not a maintainer of one of these, you know, ecosystem extension projects, but you see, you know, builds failing or PRs failing, you know, feel free to open a PR to make these fixes here, so that we can get all these kind of nailed down across the entire ecosystem. Because there's, you know, I don't know how many, but let's say more than 50 of these across the ecosystem. But yeah, okay, cool. So those are the agenda items that I had that I wanted to go through for everybody to see. So I think, John, we can go ahead and move on to your agenda item too, if you want to give us a quick little catch up on that, since it's been a little bit since we've talked about this in a community meeting.
Sure. I have some design docs up that are based on an actual implementation, which I can put up in a PR once we get the design approved, for a tool that will take an XR and run it through a composition pipeline against a real cluster and generate you an actual diff. So that resource, the XR that you're changing, and in anything that is generated by the composition pipeline, including like the removal of other downstream resources that are tagged as like resource references. You get the changes to all that stuff. through basically a combination of the render command, the trace command, and then the validate command. So we used all those things from the existing crank CLI to put this together.
Yeah, and Jonathan, one thing I was super curious about, because I know that Nick got to take a pass through design here and start providing some feedback. And I know that you had done like a lot of work as well on the implementation of it. But, something that I was thinking is that like I would not mind taking the implementation for a little test run
Sure.
now, and playing with it, seeing how it works, seeing if it's kind of covering some scenarios that I was thinking of as well, and just get some early eyes on the experience of it and like the reliability of it and stuff
Yeah.
like that. That sounds fun.
So for sure, absolutely, yeah, I'll get that to you. I can put up the PR into Crossplane with it if you want, and then you should be able to have the implementation, see the code. As far as figuring out what cases it covered, that was actually the thing I added in the most recent pass of the design docs. I added like the personas that we care about, and then I also added my integration test coverage kind of under the requirements section in sort of a TDD mindset. So like the cases that are actually covered by the integration test case stuff are listed in there right now.
Nice. And the other question I had, Jonathan, was that I think when you first opened the PR, there was like a one pager and then also a design doc. Did you consolidate on those, or
I did.
Okay,
I did.
so this design doc is like the doc here to look at. Is that right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Cool.
Yep. Yeah, I got documents in it, or got diagrams generated and everything in there. So
Very cool.
and
Very
the
cool.
diagrams come out of the real code. It's not
Cool.
theoretical.
Has and then from your experience, like, because I know you all have been kind of using it internally as well and kind of testing it with your team and stuff like that. Has that kind of like how do you feel about like the scenario coverage that you have there in terms of like the things that you all were looking for to cover by this? Is this kind of like, hey, this is the first attempt at it, or like, hey, this is kind of complete for the scenarios we're hoping for?
This is a harder question because our implementation internally hasn't really hasn't had the legs to get off the ground to be able to test through everything that we want. We've lost a couple of people on the team, so like we're trying to get on to Crossplane, and this was one of the big things that was supposed to like unblock us to be able to get there, because we're a Terraform. We have a lot of Terraform stuff right now, and so the people seeing plans is a thing that like just is starkly missing, right? When someone switches from Terraform to Crossplane, they're used to the idea of seeing what's going to change downstream, and so the ability to provide them with this thing where you can post on a PR, right, that says like this is what's going to change downstream from you, up to the point where the provider takes over and then does actual things in your infrastructure. But being able to see like I changed this XR for like my database, and then like, oh yeah, that changes the MR downstream for like my RDS, and then also the VPC, and then also this other thing, right? Like seeing that fan out kind of happen has been nice for us. But we really haven't gotten to the place where we can like prove that the thing itself is production ready. I feel really good about the test case coverage because of the way that I implemented the test framework. So it's using env test, which I know is a thing that Nick was not super enthused about. But the Kubernetes env test framework basically just runs against a local Kubernetes API server. And so you have like real actual objects there to talk to with kubectl or the Kubernetes client libraries in Go. So it all runs against that. Takes like 6 seconds or so to run one of these ITs instead of like the 3 minutes that it takes to spin up an earthly build to actually get there. And then they run in proc, right? So you can actually attach the debugger to them from your integration test environment. So yeah, to answer, I guess, come back around to answering the question. I don't have a great story about where this fits into our production usage right now, because it was kind of a blocker to that production usage.
Got it. Yeah, and I think that's a pretty interesting story as well too, Jonathan, that you all are adopting and that you're not necessarily in production yet. You see a gap and then you like try to fill that gap. That's that by itself conceptually is pretty cool. Also, I'll say that. That's cool, man. Yeah, so I'm glad that, you know, thanks for your patience too. Like, you know, while we had the craziness of V2 KubeCon and recovering from that, to be able to get some eyes on this. So I'm glad Nick was able to take a pass there. Is there any specific asks that you have right now then, John, to kind of keep driving this? Or like, hey, we're talking through it with Nick right now, and no specific asks at the time.
I don't think I have. So there was, I guess, there was one technical thing that Nick raised about it, which is how comfortable are we with a scenario where like I'm running a big diff, and like we're serially diffing all of the different components, but it is conceivable that there's like a race condition, right, where somebody updates something after you have run the diff command against it, but while the command is still running, right, it would present you with a diff that becomes then inaccurate. So Nick was talking about maybe taking like a snapshot of the things that we're going to diff against, and then like rerunning a diff, or like rerunning the a check against the resource versions. But that kind of doubles the cluster API calls that are involved in doing this, and we get caches in places to avoid having to call out too much from the client. So I'm wondering if there's like a specific strategy that you guys can think would be a good idea, or like if we're just okay with having the potential for a drift here sometimes, rerun it and see if it changes.
Yeah, that's I definitely understand the scenario there, and that's a challenge to to build something that has a super high level of confidence there. And I can also imagine like we can do this in phases as well too, of like the initial alpha implementation of this, that that there aren't necessarily as many assurances about the reliability of it, and that can be reasonable as well as you continue to mature it. So yeah, I think that's we'll have to kind of consider that angle as well.
Sure. But like, so that just the concept of having things potentially go stale in the middle of a run, we don't think is like a blocker for alpha.
Probably not. I think we want to examine it and kind of see if we have a solution for it. But if it's like, oh man, this is like a lot of complex machinery to work around this, then we'll have to weigh the challenge and the cost of implementation there, and the risk that brings along as well, versus how comfortable are we with potentially incorrect results.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, but we'll say it sounds like I'll keep making progress then on that design there, with folks reviewing the PR, and especially Nick.
All right.
Yeah, awesome, John. And thanks for continuing to drive that. Definitely appreciate you bringing it to the community and solving problems, and that's great stuff. So thank you.
Happy to help.
Cool. All right, sweet. So just checking the chat, it looks like there's some talk. Oh, cool. Scott, you shared the link to the Frisbee tool from Stacklock. So yeah, okay. So we have that information in the chat as well. Yeah, that's everything that was on the agenda doc here. So anything else that folks want to add on last minute before we go ahead and call it for the week? All right, 3, 2, 1. All right, cool. Well, great to see everybody here. Thanks for everybody's efforts on getting 1.20 out. So the next time we meet, we should have shipped 1.20, and yeah, looking forward to the next time. Cool. See everybody.
Thank you.